Welcome to Training for Inner Peace, Episode 8. What I'd like to do, since we're coming towards the end of this series, is to give you an idea of what you can expect in the final 3 episodes. In Episode 8, I want to comprehensively recap the entire process of bringing oneself to presence. We had our first exercises in 3 and 4 in a witnessing presence, then in 5 and 6 in a more focused presence. Then in episode 7, I talked about some of the disturbances that one might experience. But what I haven't really done is recap the entire process. So that's what we will do here today. Then in episode 9, I want to cover the benefits that one experiences in practicing presence. And in short, those benefits are establishing a new relationship with life. And then finally, in the final episode 10, I'll recap where we've been through the 10 episodes. So in episode 8, let's talk about how we begin a practice of presence. First of all, I'm going to assume that you have your meditation timer and you have a quiet place to practice where you will not be interrupted, that you can shut the door or go off by yourself so that you can be assured and not have to worry about interruptions that might occur along the way. Now, if I asked you right now to go to sleep and you were seriously going to attempt to go to sleep, would you be able to? Well, probably not. There's a term, we drift off to sleep. And when we eventually fall asleep at night, it's because we let go and suddenly, without knowing it, we're asleep. And the most common challenge I hear that people new to a practice of presence, or even people who have been practicing presence for a number of years have, is I just can't stop the thoughts from interrupting my presence. Well, I want to remind you that we're not trying to stop the thoughts. In fact, trying to stop thoughts that come into our minds are kind of like trying to sit right here and, okay, in the next 3 minutes, I'm going to fall asleep. The harder we try, probably the less chance of us falling asleep actually is. And so as we begin the process here of presence, let's remember that we are not trying to stop our thoughts. What we are doing instead is redirecting our attention from thoughts to presence. If I asked you to, instead of looking at a picture on the wall, to look at your floor, that wouldn't be hard to redirect your attention from the picture to the floor. Or if I asked you, if you were outside, to redirect your attention from the sky to the ground, that wouldn't be hard. And think of it in this way, or practice it in this way, is that we're not trying to stop our thoughts. We're simply redirecting consciousness from thought to what is reality right now. First, in a witnessing presence that takes in the sights and sounds and aromas around us. And then as we move forward in our practice, a focused presence that narrows that witnessing presence down to an individual point. So as we're preparing to enter into presence, it's very important to set the right tone. And by that I mean, if you were to exercise at a club or go out for a run or lift weights at home and immediately jumped into bed and tried to go to sleep, that probably wouldn't work out very well. You'd be all worked up. Or alternatively, if you watched a very engaging movie, and then as soon as the movie was over, said to yourself, I'm going to go to sleep, well, that wouldn't be easy. And similarly, if we exit our busy helter-skelter life, go down to our presence, point of presence practice, and say, okay, now, 1, 2, 3, gong, I'm going to drop into presence. Pretty difficult. So what I always recommend and what I actually do myself is I ease in to my practices of presence. And so if my practice is 20 minutes, and that's the time period I generally recommend to settle into for a typical practice, I'll spend first, before that practice begins, 15 minutes reading something inspirational, reading something that speaks to my soul, that helps me to decompress and brings myself to the moment. So that rather than trying not to think about what happened at work or what happened with the family or a worry I have for the balance of the week, I redirect my attention from those worrisome thoughts or those stressful thoughts to some inspirational literature that speaks to my soul. And I usually spend about 15 minutes with it. It takes about that period of time to kind of, decompress. And once I feel that I've kind of entered a point of peace where I can begin the practice, then I'll initiate my timer, my 20-minute timer, and begin the actual practice. And the way to begin the practice that I think would be very helpful is to, again, assume the right posture. What I usually do is sit on the floor with my back against a soft piece of furniture. I dim the lights. I slightly bow my head. I join my middle finger and my thumb. Again, I don't know why, but it seems to help. And I just breathe in and out. We very rarely breathe deeply, filling up our lungs totally. And completely empty them then. And then as I feel myself slip into even a further state of relaxation, I'll softly close my eyes, not tightly, but softly, so that the light kind of can almost translucently come through my eyelids. And I'll just direct my attention or redirect my attention from my breath or from the thoughts I may be having to the light that's on the inside of my eyelids. And I'll just continue to breathe and watch the light. And typically, for me, that light will change. It dances around a little bit. It's not just a solid uh, piece of light or sheet of color. It dances around, and as I fall further into presence, sometimes I notice the colors on the inside of my eyelid or the light on the inside of my eyelids changing shape and kind of dancing, almost as if you've ever seen them, like the northern lights in the sky. And I'll just watch that. I don't try to make anything happen. I don't try to chase anything away. When thoughts enter my mind, as they do for everyone, I redirect my attention to the colors. I don't try to stop my thoughts. I don't try to chase them away. I notice them and just redirect my attention to the colors and the light on the inside of my eyelids. The presence is really eternal. And the reason the presence is eternal is it happens now, and then it happens now, then it happens now again. So this now goes on and on forever. And so that's the reason we don't set goals for practice, because the essence of practice is redirecting your attention to now. And so a goal is something in the future. A judgment is something contrasted with an expectation or the past. And so the reason we don't set goals or evaluate progress is we have a specific intention to redirect our attention to right now. And continue to breathe in, breathe out. And this is a practice. The practice of redirecting your attention to presence is an end unto itself. And then when your timer goes off, you exit the practice in the same way that you began it, with a few deep breaths, redirecting your attention from the inside of the color on the inside of the light or light on the inside of your eyelids back to the breath. And slowly open your eyelids and re-enter the world. Now, just like we entered the practice purposefully and slowly, first reading something inspirational to relax the pressures that were coming into our room or our place of practice with, we exit the practice the same way. And what I've done for years, and I'd recommend this, although it may not be everyone's cup of tea, is I have a journal and I'll just capture some thoughts or some feelings about where I'm at this point in time. And it doesn't need to be any fancy prose or anything that you would ever share with anyone else, but it's just a way to exit the practice without jumping up and rushing off to your next appointment. Another way to exit a practice would be to slowly walk to your and take a shower. Go to your restroom and start a warm shower and just let the water hit you for 5 or 10 minutes and bring yourself back slowly to the world. So that is a practice. Again, you may choose to begin, and I think this would be wise, with a witnessing presence before you begin to focus in on the focused presence. But presence is simply redirecting your consciousness to the moment. Next time, we'll talk about some of the benefits that one will experience after a while of practicing routine presence. We'll talk about how our relationship with life evolves and changes, and we'll conclude the last episode 10 with where we've come through episodes 1 through 9. Thank you for joining me on Training with Inner Peace.